I'd like to call this meeting to order of the Geneva Historic Preservation Commission for Tuesday, May 2nd, 2023. I will read my introduction first. This evening, the Historic Preservation Commission is reconvening this public hearing concerning the request for demolition and deed designation of the historic landmark located at 4 East State Street, HPC cases number 2022-079 and 2022-080. The public hearing was duly noticed and subsequently continued per the city ordinance to allow for examination of the professional review of the petitioner's submitted pro forma statement by consultants retained by the City of Geneva at the request of the Commission. Additionally, the public hearing has been continued to allow cross-examination and testimony that is provided and to hear additional public testimony relevant to the applicant's request. Tonight, we will begin by allowing the commissioners to ask any questions of the representatives of the Tesca Associates and the Planera Group. Next, I will recognize any members of the public that have questions about the consultant's analysis. Then the applicant will be allowed to cross-examine the consultant team. Once all speakers have been given an opportunity to speak, I will recognize any attendees who would like to provide additional testimony or further cross-examine any testimony provided. All rules and procedures pertaining to the conduct of the public hearing and stated on January 18th, 2023 remain in effect. All cross-examine or questions about the proposed demolition and deed designation shall be directed to me, and as chairman, I will recognize the speakers to maintain order. Questions about the Historic Preservation Commission process itself may be directed to me or the Preservation Planner Lambert or City Attorney Sandak. Those in attendance should refrain from audible gestures in support or in disagreement with the testimony given by the applicant or any other person testifying. In order to give testimony, you must provide your name on the registration sheet located at the entrance of the hearing room and sign in the space provided. By signing the registration sheet, you agree and understand that anything you say will be considered sworn testimony and that you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. When given testimony, please come forward to the lectern, state your name, speak clearly, slowly, and loudly so the HPC members and the audience and recording services may hear you. If you choose to testify multiple times, please state your name each time you speak. Be concise when presenting your testimony. If your point has already been made, it is not necessary to be repeated by the speaker or other speakers who may testify. Each point is recorded and will be considered as the Historic Preservation Commission develops its recommendation. You may provide your testimony in written form, but such written testimony must be presented to the preservation planner prior to the closing of the hearing. Written testimony is acknowledged and distributed to the commissioners, but is not read into the record. At this time, I will administer the oath to those who have signed the registration form. Anyone wishing to give sworn testimony, ask questions, or cross-examine anyone giving sworn testimony, please stand and raise your right hand and answer, "I do," to affirm your intent. Do you affirm that the testimony you are about to make is the full truth to the best of your knowledge? If yes, please respond, "I do."
I do.
Thank you. You may be seated. Because one of our commissioners is joining virtually for a medical reason, we need a motion from the commissioners to physically present to allow the virtual participation of Commissioner Jensen. May I have a motion to allow Commissioner Jensen to?
I move to allow Commissioner Jensen to attend the meeting remotely.
I second.
Okay, I'll take a quick roll call on that. Do you want me to, or, okay. Commissioner Jensen, or Commissioner, I'm sorry,
McManus.
McManus,
Aye.
Commissioner Hartman,
Aye.
and Commissioner Solomon, I'm sorry, Stazen,
Aye.
and Commissioner Zelmer, I say aye also. So the motion passes. Okay, I think now we will make a roll call of those present in the room.
Hartman,
Here.
Jensen,
She's,
Remotely.
I think we can't hear her.
Speak louder, Commissioner Jensen.
She's self-muted. She's got to unmute herself.
You're on mute.
You're on
Commissioner
mute, right?
Jensen. She has to unmute herself.
Well, it might be her computer, not just the,
Yeah, it's difficult.
hey, Jewel, can you hear us? You can hear it? So maybe, is it your computer that is, the volume is way down? Because sometimes I'll have the window open and that's unmuted, but my whole computer's volume is way down. No.
Got to unmute her microphone.
I've sent her a message.
Can you tell her to unmute her microphone? There's a tab.
Do you see at the bottom, maybe, there's a tab that has a little microphone? Can you unmute that? Unclick the little microphone?
Well, it may be on the right for her, unfortunately.
Good God.
Can I move her here?
What if she left and came back in again? Would that help, maybe? Because they ask a question usually when you come into stuff like that, that, you know, you want to
Yeah, if you,
join with audio.
I don't think it's going to help, though. She's got to figure out how to unmute her own microphone. Oh, it's just going to be the same thing.
What if she took a picture of it and texted it to you?
Paused.
she paused.
Yeah, so we're not taking, I mean, we know she's here, so we can show she's here. And we're not taking any roll call for a while, so let's proceed.
Well, okay.
Show that she's here on the roll
Yeah,
call.
okay.
Jensen here, so, McManus,
Here,
Solomon, Stazen,
Here.
Zelmer.
Here. We have a quorum with people in the room.
We should ask our court reporter to acknowledge she's here.
Okay. Will the court reporter please acknowledge that you're here?
Michael?
Okay.
Yes?
Okay, I had to go out, I went out and came back in. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you
Okay.
now.
Good job, Lisa.
Very good. Now put yourself on.
Thank-
No. Okay, is the court reporter online?
They're here. They're online.
Oh, we need her to acknowledge.
I know.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Sorry, that was on me. Try asking again.
Oh, okay. Will the court reporter please acknowledge that you're here and state your name?
They're here.
Is it labor?
Yes.
Can you all hear me now? Hello, hello. Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me?
The McDonald's.
Okay.
Okay.
We can hear.
Do you need him to say
Yeah,
it again?
Can you state your name, please?
Okay, I'm Labor Sharp, and I'm going to be the court reporter tonight. I just want to make sure that everybody's able to hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
If you could speak
Thank you.
up, that would be helpful.
Thank you. Yeah, let me just turn my volume up a little bit more. I won't be talking, of course, but I'll be taking the record tonight.
Perfect. Thank you. Can you hear us clearly?
I do hear everybody. I mean, yes, sir, I do hear you. I would appreciate whenever someone is going to talk, is going to speak, please introduce your name so that way I know who is speaking.
Okay.
Correct.
Perfect.
Okay,
And I'm ready to go on the record anytime you all are ready to go on the record. Thank you.
okay. So now we will, before we begin tonight's testimony, Mr. Lambert, will you identify whether any written communication has been received that should be distributed and entered into the record?
Thank you, Chairman Zelmer. I overlooked one piece of correspondence at our last session, and it is from Sally Wiardra, and I will distribute that now.
Thank you. Okay. With that, do commissioners have any questions for the representatives from Tesca Associates or the Planera Group?
You know, I just, Lisa McManus, Commissioner, just for the record. You know, I was just curious about, so the Altus Works had done an assessment in the same way that you have, and part of the discussion was about kind of building safety and those types of elements. Could you speak about your thoughts on the safety of the building as it is currently?
Terry Haymaker. Up and down. Terry Haymaker, Planera Group. The report that we prepared includes the results of the Altus Works.
Sure.
So we're basing the report on the assumptions included in that. So it's not different or separate. It's the
Right.
same.
Okay.
The same results for, cost to renovate, what issues exist in the existing building.
Right. But I guess what I'm saying is, just in plain terms, what are your thoughts about the safety of that building as it currently stands?
Sure. So we did not do any sort of safety assessment as a part
Okay.
of this scope.
Okay, thank you. Planera, the group that
Okay.
did the pro forma for us.
You don't forget to turn on your mic. Do you have a question? Okay. Mr. Stazen, do you have any questions for the Planera Group?
No,
None?
none.
Okay,
Thought it was pretty straightforward.
okay. Jewel, do you have any questions for the Planera Group?
No, not at this time, I do not.
Okay. Go ahead.
Can we go back to them after further discussion?
Well, if you have specific questions regarding their report,
Okay.
now is the time that we should bring that
Okay.
up to them.
Okay, I guess I do have a question. So, Don Hartman, I mean, do you believe that there are any other options that have not been pursued by the, I mean, I know the presentation, there were options, but as far as, you know, the financial end of it, not the structural integrity or anything like that. Are there other viable options?
Scott Goldstein from Tesca Associates. These are representative options. There could be other options in addition to this. We focused on 6 options.
Okay. All right, I know it was, thank you. That's all I have right now.
Okay. Can you explain to me what kind of TIF funding you expected? You used TIF funding in some of your options, correct?
Yes.
Could you explain what TIF was being used and how that would be used?
My name is Lee Brown, and I'm president of Tesca Associates. So the TIF funding is like any outside source of funds. In the case of a tax increment district, which already exists, changes in the property value means a change in the receipts that are collected by the tax increment district. And so essentially, as the value of the site goes up, the property owner pays more taxes. Those are collected by the TIF district, and they are available for public improvements within the TIF district. The city has the ability to use those for eligible expenses, which can include work to prepare a site for development. It can include physical improvements of an existing building, and those funds are not applied just from the site itself, but potentially are available for all the incremental revenues that are available throughout a TIF district. Now, this site is included within a TIF district, but it is not all of the TIF district. So the available funds are based on the growth of the overall district itself over the base value at the time the district was established.
Okay. And how much, there were, I know that, a few of your options used the TIF district money and some of it didn't, is that correct?
Do you want to specify exactly which ones?
That is correct. We looked at.
Can you state your name also? I'm sorry.
Scott Goldstein, Tesca Associates. We looked at a variety of options. Some of those scenarios used TIF at a minimal amount. Some used larger amount. The largest scenario of the most building area did not include the assumption of TIF. So what we're trying to show through this analysis is that there were a variety of ways to pursue this development, some with public participation, some without.
Okay, so you had, yeah, I think of the 6, I think almost half used, or more than half used it, correct? Yeah.
Don Hartman. So, just to break this down simply for me, so can TIF funds be directly used for historical renovation on that particular property?
Yes, renovation is a eligible expense.
Okay, thank you.
And who makes the decision about, I assume that the applicant would apply for TIF money, correct?
Correct.
Is that how that system works?
Yes.
And then they give an idea of what they would be using that money for, or is it,
Again, I'm Lee Brown. Yes, there's an application, and they are essentially asked what eligible expenses are to be paid for by the TIF.
Okay.
And it's entirely within the city's authority to say yes or no, those TIF funds
Okay.
are available.
That's probably where I was headed with that. I just wanted to, that it would be, that money is not at the discretion of the city, but you know, is decided by the city. Do you feel that the historic grants that were in some of your proposals, if you could explain, like, whether those were so important that they would, that the project would tip over from a positive return on investment to a negative return on investment if they were not pursued?
Sure. Terry Haymaker, Planera Group. So what we looked at in terms of the grants that were available from the state, from Landmarks Illinois, there are 2 grants that are available for this type of project. The eligible costs within those grants are usually soft costs, consultant fees, planning fees, not construction costs. They would assist with the total project costs for the renovation of existing building by having those funds available for that specific line item in a total budget. So a total budget has hard costs, construction costs, and soft costs, consulting fees, permits, et cetera. Those 2 grants that are eligible from Landmarks Illinois could be applied, they need to be evaluated, could be applied to this project for those types of costs. And it would be in partnership with the city as well, through this Landmarks Illinois grant.
Okay. And do you know whether that, if they didn't apply, because that's the onus on the owner to apply for those grants, correct?
The city can apply for those grants in partnership with a redevelopment project that is being led from a private owner.
Okay. I don't know whether I have any, do you have any other, do any of the commissioners have questions regarding the,
I do not.
okay.
I do not.
Commissioner Jensen, do you have any additional questions specifically for?
I do,
Go ahead.
I do not.
Okay. I do not. Okay, great, thank you. With that, I guess we will open it up to the public for specifically asking questions about the pro forma analysis. Is there anyone in the room that would want to have questions for the pro forma analysis that was done by Teskin Associates? If seeing none, and there's nobody online, correct? Okay. Okay. With that, if no one is online with that, I will open it up to the Shodine Family Foundation, the applicant, to respond. Thank you.
Good evening. For the record, my name is David Patzelt, P-A-T-Z-E-L-T, 77 North First Street, Geneva, Illinois, 60134. I have a presentation that I'd like to go through, and I'll pull it up here. I've handed out paper copies to everybody in the room, and I think I hit. For the record, a little bit of background. We have reviewed the TESCA report. We have found some inconsistencies or errors in that report. Out of a professional courtesy this week, Monday morning, I contacted TESCA Associates via email and asked them if they wanted to review the comments before I offer the comments this evening in in front of the public as public record, and due to the potential conflict in the open public records and public hearing, they elected and suggested that we present them here at the meeting. We did, prior to the start of the meeting, we did offer paper copies to TSCA, and I believe that they have started reviewing some of these comments, and they may be prepared to answer some of them tonight. I don't know, but ultimately at the end of the presentation, we would like to know whether there is going to be a corrected report submitted, and if so, does the public testimony and public record period have to remain open in order for that to be submitted? Some of the items that I will be discussing include, we believe that they were, a couple comments that they were not following the ordinance per se, but they were following the direction of the city staff that was included in the request for proposal issued by city staff. And we believe that our application is in accordance with our application is in accordance with the our application is in accordance with the ordinance, and we feel that their report should also be in accordance with the ordinance. There is some discussion that I'll get into about condemnation without proper compensation, and that's we believe that there is some evidence in their report that suggests that the property has gone through some form of condemnation. We believe that in our report that we had submitted to the city, our pro forma, we had used an interest rate of 6%. However, that was in October. They have used, TSCA has used 6.5%, and we'll talk about what interest rate should be used. There is an annual debt service cost versus a monthly debt service cost that we need to discuss and review. We also need to determine the loan amount and what's referred to as a stress test on that loan amount, and I'll talk about that in more detail. And then as well, and to wrap it up, a corrective narrative that would go along with some of these calculations that we have found. The first one is on page 2 of their report. What I've tried to do in my presentation here is, in essence, take the page of their report and simply put the notes in colors and or highlights so it's easily identifiable as to what I'm trying to speak to. The first one here on page 2, ordinance section 10-6-10.A.9 is the somewhat of the directions for the commission's action. The commission being you. It reads, the commission shall consider only the property, building, structure, architectural feature, or object proposed for demolition. The merit of any proposed replacement, construction, or improvement shall not be a standard of review for a demolition request. Highlighted in their report, they state, per the ordinance, this analysis focuses on redevelopment options of both the building and the site. And much of the discussion that you were having prior to my presentation, you were talking about TIF and revenue generated by not only the historic structure, but the options that were given in their report discuss TIF dollars that are available from other buildings that may be constructed on the site, as well as you've heard testimony that it may be dollars greater than just our building or our site, but dollars that may be available in the entire TIF district, which is some square miles of area of Geneva. We believe that they should be only following and considering what TIF dollars this historic structure would generate. The next one.
Excuse me, can I interject here?
Sure.
I just have,
If you have a question,
I do, just pertaining, so you're saying that TIF funds only generated off the historic site?
Our interpretation of the ordinance is exactly that you have to analyze only the structure, the historic structure itself, that is at question or is subject of demolition. So that building and the potential TIF revenue that is generated from that building itself, not from any adjoining building such as the four-story building or the four-story plus the penthouse, the five-story building that is suggested to be on that site.
So you're saying that the only TIF funds available are generated from that historic site only? Because that's not what was stated earlier.
The TESCA report includes funds, potential options for TIF funds that are beyond the historic structure.
Okay,
Not only beyond the historic structure on the larger site of 2 acres, but you've also heard testimony that they could use TIF funds that are of a much greater area.
Okay.
That TIF district extends, as an example, west of the Fox River and well east up the hill, almost all the way out, I believe it's all the way to Aldi. So that district may have TIF funds in it, and/or you've heard a suggestion that that TIF district dollars may grow in due time. Those dollars taken from those other properties potentially could be used
okay.
for funding of this.
Just trying to understand the TIF, okay, all right.
So you have the TIF district, which is a
Yep.
very large area. You have the property, and then you have the stone structure.
Correct.
And they could all generate different amounts of TIF increment.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Sure. We've been talking about dollars at the top of page 10. You can see that they have asterisk, triple asterisk, the assumption that they have also reduced city permit fees. So just in addition to actual check, the city writing the developer a check or giving dollars to the development, their proposals also include giving credit of permit fees. So those dollars need to be identified or should be identified if somebody wants to know what is the total dollar contribution to the developer to restore the structure. We believe that you should be identifying how many dollars are going to be credited as well, so that the taxpayers are all aware and know what is the total funding for this historic structure. In about the middle of the page, TESCA is admitting that HPC condemned the building without proper compensation. Basically, they said in red, based on interviews with other developers and real estate professionals, it is our view that the value of the property as it stands now with the landmark restriction has lower market value than a prorated portion of the full site. So, in essence, when the Historic Preservation Commission and the City Council placed landmark designation on the subject property, TESCA is admitting or stating that they, in essence, have devalued or brought the value of the subject property down. So that, we believe, is a form of condemnation, and there's not proper compensation back to the property owner. Further, in the yellow, TESCA goes on to state the market value for development is primarily attributable to the remainder of the site. Furthermore, the property is shown with a $1 price on a sign on the building, and there have been no known offers for the historic building. It is true that there is a sign on the building that says it's for sale for $1. However, the sign also specifically states that $1 is for the building only and does not include the land that's underneath the building. That certainly has value, so we don't believe that using a comparison of $1 is the ultimate value of the property. At the bottom, you can see in yellow, TESCA has indicated that particularly if assumed the leasee is the same as the owner of the property, the leasing fee should not be included in our analysis. We disagree with that. Again, per the ordinance, the applicant is directed and instructed that you're to calculate cost based on market, which includes lease fees. So regardless of who the tenant is, if you're comparing market to market, you have to include some cost for those lease fees. On page 11 of their report, under box 5A, it says plus federal historic tax credits. And prior to my testimony, there were some comments raised about the federal tax credits. Couple issues with the federal tax credits. I understand that TSCA said that those potentially are available. They, not necessarily knowing, and perhaps were not instructed to go the full distance on whether those tax credits are officially available. We have talked with the state of Illinois and have also talked with an expert that's with the federal government regarding tax credits, and we've been informed that the stone remnant structure that stands there today does not have integrity, does not meet the definition of integrity, and they do not, and we have it in writing from them, they do not understand how the Historic Preservation Commission, as well as the city, identified this building to be landmarked and how it has any integrity.
Have you included that in your report, that documentation?
We did not include any federal tax credits in our pro forma.
No, I mean, did you
and we did
include
not
their documentation that says that they feel that it is not landmarkable, if you will?
We have not provided that.
Okay, so that's more of a supposition than I would say an actual
It's
statement
not,
of fact.
we were not asked if we have that information, and nor did the city inquire themselves, and we believe that that information is also in the hands of the city. We obtained that information through Freedom of Information Act and obtained it via an email that the city has in their hands.
The city has in their hands what? What email?
Email from the state that says that they don't know how the city landmarked this building because the building does not have the proper
It doesn't have structural
integrity.
It doesn't have integrity. Can I stop for one moment, or do you? Yeah. Mr. Lambert, is that true?
I am not aware of any communication that Mr. Patzel's speaking of. I have had one conversation with Anthony Rubano about in 2015 or 16, who did not make any determination at that time, as that depended on a lot of factors, and that's the only conversation I've had with anybody at the Illinois State Historic Preservation Office and regarding integrity of this building.
So you have an email directed to the city from a Freedom of Information Act request that says that it is not landmarkable, if you will, from the state of Illinois.
Correct.
Okay.
Don Hartman, so can you give me a quick, I'm having a hard time understanding your definition of the integrity. Are we talking financial or structural, or just help me out?
One of the findings when the Historic Preservation Commission or the National Registry chooses to landmark a structure or a building or an object, there is a list of criteria.
Okay.
That list of criteria, one of the elements is what's referred to as historical integrity.
Okay.
The definition then of historical integrity has 7 different categories that the structure object must meet.
Yes, okay.
And the state's position, as well as the U.S. National Park Registry, I believe it is, who identifies and issues the tax credits, identifies those steps. Those specifically, the property lost its integrity when the white building was peeled back, and the stone remnant structure remained. That is the point that that they believe it lost its integrity,
Okay.
its historical integrity.
But you have nothing to, you have a supposition at this point.
I do not
But-
have a supposition. We have an
Can you
email.
produce that, though? I mean, that,
Oh.
it's,
Yeah, so you guys applied to the to be on the National Register with,
No, we did not apply.
with the blacksmith building, so.
We did
you're-
not apply. No, we obtained this email through FOIA. Seeing the information in the email, we then contacted the state and had a discussion with them about that, and they concurred that the 7 steps, the 7 criteria for historical integrity,
I don't-
the structure did not have it.
okay, but you don't have anything in.
So you spoke with someone from the state of Illinois, and they told you that it wasn't possible
It wasn't.
to obtain some sort of official designation, because it wasn't
They-
structurally sound.
That's correct, that they do not know how it could be landmarked because it does not have historical integrity.
How did they
the
know?
name of the person you
How do
spoke
they know?
to?
Yeah,
They know that because they've seen the pictures, and they have
I have a
corresponded with the
question.
city.
okay.
Okay, do you have the name of the person that you spoke to?
Was it Anthony Rabat?
Anthony Urbano. It was October of 2022, and it was an email that specifically indicated, but I can talk about it when it's my testimony.
Okay, yeah, I mean,
Do you want to give me a copy of the document you're referring to, Kate?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so,
I have a question here. Wouldn't that information be part of the application before the designation? Isn't it a little late now, after designation was granted, to question what should have been analyzed prior to? So that really goes back to the application process and the designation. So if that's an issue now, we're beyond a decision.
Could I ask, Commissioner, that you be a little more specific on when you state the application?
Well,
Are
you
referring
said,
to the application of the demolition?
no,
Or are you referring to the
the
application?
historic designation
We would agree with you. We would agree with you that that should have been.
been documented for
Correct.
it to be granted.
and if you had this document in, why wouldn't you have brought that up? Why, was that in your original?
In 2022, I don't understand why the city of Geneva, who has it in their email, why is it our responsibility to go through the Freedom of Information Act?
You're putting
Correct.
together a demolition
And
application,
and
correct?
our application was submitted, was in, and going through, after the application is in, and during the application review process, we began the process of seeking the city's documents through the FOIA
Freedom of-
process.
Okay, and then,
During that FOIA process, going through the hundreds of emails and documentation, we find this email from the state of Illinois.
and you subsequently have spoke to him.
I have not, we had the
okay.
attorney, our
Okay,
attorney Kate
you did not,
McCracken.
though. So-
Correct.
Okay, so someone from the Shodine organization spoke to them? Or
Correct.
their agent?
Correct.
Okay, so you presented it as if you had spoke to them?
No, what I'm presenting here is that if you're going to suggest that we can get federal tax credits, you can't. We don't believe that you can. If the city believes that they can get federal tax credits for this project, go for it. We'll wait and see what kind of tax credits they can get. Second issue with that
Okay.
is we believe that the building should never have been landmarked because it does not have historical integrity. And we believe with that, there was an error in landmarking the subject structure.
I'm a little confused on that part. So by taking down the existing, what we would know as the restaurant and the white building that you stated, that took away the integrity of the blacksmith shop?
That is.
That's a little confusing.
I'm not a historical
Okay.
preservationist.
Okay, understood.
I'm not an expert in it.
Okay,
I can only convey to you that what we have learned from the state historic.
okay. Just trying to understand that. Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, you can move on.
Paragraph 5B, in the darker yellow or orange, the return on investment, the ROI, of the value of the property in year 10, that includes net present value, NPV, of net operating income over the 10-year period, plus the residual value of the building in year 10, would be 24.7% return over equity on investment. That statement is fine, but we would like to see the documentation and the calculation that supports that statement. Our calculations don't come up with anything supporting that figure. At the bottom, I've identified the yellow, again referring to the yellow highlight. It does not appear that TSCA included the cost to acquire the full site, the corner property, the demolition of the corner property being the cycle shop and consignment shop, and/or any of the anticipated costs for the environmental cleanup of that corner property.
Could you repeat that? I'm trying to...
So within the TSCA report, they have suggested or provided costs for not only the remnant stone structure, the entire property, plus the corner property, which is a separate parcel, what's now the consignment shop and the Geneva cyclery. And they're suggesting that or a couple of their options is to combine all of those parcels and build a 4-story building, or build a 4-story plus a penthouse, a 5-story building. We don't believe that they have included the cost to acquire that corner property, to demolish that, the cost to demolish that building, the consignment shop, and/or costs for environmental cleanup that have not yet been incurred on that building. So in essence, some of their costs, we believe their costs appear to be light, or not fully inclusive of all of the property and buildings that they are using in their analysis.
That's for only the portions that include the full site, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, but is it true that while you have to purchase the property, you can purchase the property, Shodine can purchase, or Shodine Family Foundation can purchase the property, correct?
So the Shodine organization is under contract to acquire the corner property, what's known as the consignment shop and the Geneva
Okay, you are
cycler.
under contract to do that?
We're under contract to purchase it.
Okay.
Is that?
I guess that was my question, to make sure that yeah, it is available to the Shodine.
That's correct.
Okay.
And is that based on a contingency on some other development on that property?
It is, there's, the only contingency that we have on the acquisition of that property is a dollar amount.
Okay.
That should we not purchase, or should we not fulfill the contract and close on the property, we will be losing what's commonly referred to as earnest money.
Sure.
or a deposit that is on that.
Okay.
On that acquisition.
Okay.
Because now you're stating the whole property, when previously you were just stating the historical building as far as development, so.
Yeah, so what we're trying to point out here is, I'm trying to give you different issues or different problems throughout the
Understood.
the analysis.
Okay.
And here, in one of the TSCA analysis, they've suggested as an option, which we hear and understand that option is to include not only the what's commonly known as the mill race property, but also the Geneva cyclery consignment shop property. And if you include those pieces of property to build a larger 4-story or 5-story building, you need to include all the costs for that for all of those pieces of property.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
On page 14 of the report, in there, they describe various scenarios, and this has to do with the 4-story as of right, not adding anything additional, and the bullet point that's immediately above the photograph, they suggest that the return on investment, ROI, for both scenarios is very similar. Scenario 2A would have a return on investment of, they have a 16.4% rate of return. We believe that there is a math error in their report, and that rate of return would actually be a 1.6% rate of return. And that's in comparison to the option 2B that they believed had a 16.65% rate of return, and again, the math error, we believe, shows that it's only a 1.7% rate of return. At a 1.6% and a 1.7% rate of return, we previously have heard testimony from TSCA that at a public-private partnership, typically you're looking for a 10% rate of return. So the suggestion or argument would be here is that if you're going to use the 4-story as of right project, in order to get to a 10% rate of return, we would need TIF dollars not only for the historic structure, we would need TIF contribution to build the 4-story structure.
Excuse me again, Mr. Patzel. So you're stating that they're off 15% on their calculations?
Yes.
Okay.
Thus, as I get further into the report, thus if our math is correct, and my suggestion to them before coming to this meeting, professional courtesy, do you want to review this, have this discussion before we have it in this forum broadcast on Geneva television? So. Looking specifically at their various scenarios, starting with scenario 1A, the standalone, you've heard my comment regarding the historic tax credit, and you can see under option 1A and option 1B, they had a line item, the estimated historic tax credits of $190,000 and change. Based on our findings that we can't get historic tax credits, we believe that that needs to be zeroed out, and then in essence, the estimated contribution for the standalone project that is suggested to be at $1.5 million actually needs to be at $1.7 million. Again, that doesn't include any of the dollars associated with the waiver of building permit fees.
Well, excuse me again,
Sure.
Mr. Patzel. So why can historic tax credit not be attained?
So when we were having the discussion about whether the building has historical integrity, it has to have integrity.
Not qualifying.
It doesn't qualify.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may I make a comment at
Sure.
this point in time?
Well, do you have a question, or I
Well,
think?
it's a comment in the form of a question, I
Very
guess. Regarding all these analysis on the cost, construction, et cetera, I understand these are models or examples. And where I'm a little confused now is on your original premise that this isn't even in the purview of this demolition ordinance. I don't know why that it is that important to be that dollar specific on examples that may not be relevant to the issue to begin with. And
Again,
finally,
we would
is there a way to substantiate whether your first statement is correct or not? Because otherwise, we're going down a road that we don't need to be going.
Are you talking about the historic tax credit, George?
No, the
Or are you talking
original
about
premise on the demolition ordinance not relevant to
We'll
all
take,
those particular issues.
right, consistent with your thinking, and you're going to hear expert or testimony from our council. The ordinance states that this project needs to stand on its own and be financially feasible and not cause a hardship to the applicant. We're talking here about TIF dollars. That is proof in itself that if you have to give me $1 to make it financially feasible, it's not financially feasible to the applicant. The ordinance doesn't contemplate at all giving dollars to the applicant to refurbish the building. It's only through city staff asking TESCA to do a review analysis to see what other options are available. We believe if you go through the ordinance on the historic, on the demolition and de-landmarking, it doesn't contemplate that at all. So we agree that perhaps we're going down a path we shouldn't be going down. We also believe that there's a lot of detail and information here in these numbers, and out of professional courtesy, perhaps we need to hit the pause button and allow TESCA to review their report and respond back. Perhaps they may be ready tonight to respond back to these. It may change the numbers. Maybe we don't even need to be talking about numbers.
Well, that is my concern, is even if both parties agree exactly on the number of the relevancy of these models, given the premise of your first statement.
We agree.
But we have, as a commission, have deemed this an historic building in the state of, in the city of Geneva duly, and it's been upheld by the city council, which has to do it. Is it a supermajority or is it just a majority for Mr. Lambert?
To uphold our decision was just a majority required.
Okay.
As a clarification, Mr. Chairman, my point was about the statement, merit of any proposed replacement, construction, or improvement shall not be the standard for review for the demolition request. And that's exactly what these exhibits are. But I'm at a loss, but that was a pretty significant statement to begin with.
I understand that. Mr. Lambert, can you respond real quickly to
Yes,
that?
I think there's some key words in this part of the definition that are really important. The actual ordinance section has been identified, talks about the merit of any proposed replacement, construction, or improvement. We're not evaluating the merit of a proposed building. What is being put together are scenarios. Again, the ordinance calls in another section that all alternative options should be examined as part of a demolition request. And so the merit, the merit of the design, the merit of the quality, the merit of the scale is not what's being discussed in relationship to the historic building, but there is there's been scenarios that have been developed to look at alternate options of how this building may or may not be able to be rehabilitated financially or not financially feasibly. So I think it's the way staff understands it, the question is, we're not judging the merit of a proposed building. There is no proposed building, but to put numbers to it, some assumptions had to be made to apply some real numbers to do an analysis of the pro forma statement.
Okay.
It's probably a fine distinction, but merit is the critical word of that section. And nobody's being asked to judge the merit of any design on the balance of the property. What's being asked is to evaluate potential scenarios that may support the rehabilitation or prove that it doesn't support the rehabilitation of the historic landmark.
Thank you.
If you could continue.
Sure. Page 15 was the option for a four-story as-of-right scenario. Tesca used an interest rate of approximately 6.5%. We believe that that is not a market rate in today's banking environment. Perhaps a 7.5% rate should be used. If a 7.5% rate was used, you could see in red what happens with the dollars, and the return on investment will drop significantly. We'll find out here in the next day or two whether that 7.5% may not be a viable rate at that point. So we believe that they should be using at least 7.5%, if not a higher interest rate in their analysis. Again, on page 15, looking at their numbers in another way, if you look at number 3, the commercial loan, in black it says payment. That payment says $212,897. That is the payment amount to pay off the estimated loan of $31,530,000. At the bottom of the page, under the return on investment, where it's highlighted yellow, annual, they used that same annual debt service of $212,897. So up above, it's a monthly fee. Down below, it's to be an annual fee, which, if you take that 212 times the 12 months, you'll find that the annual debt service fee is actually $2,554,764, which gives you a negative cash flow annually, which then would generate a negative return. And that is for both scenarios 2A and 2B. Still on page 15, if you look at the commercial loan, the estimated loan amount, within the document, we had identified what's called a stress test. When you go for commercial lending today, you're required, the banks will run your loan through what's known as a stress test. There's 3 elements to the stress test. Tesca identified that at the end of their report that, yes, there is a stress test, and identified what those steps are. However, when you run the stress test, the bank will take the lowest loan amount that is arrived at out of that stress test. There was an error made, we believe, in the Tesca report, that they didn't take the lowest dollar amount, they took the highest dollar amount of the loan. So at the bottom of the page here in red, you can see that those 3 elements of the stress test are a loan-to-value, LTV. If you ran that stress test for this proposed option or development, you would see that the maximum loan amount for scenario 2A would be $18,557,084. For 2B, it would be $18,368,000. If you took the next stress test, the loan to cost, and that's using a 75% of the cost, you would see that the loan amount could be $31,824,830 for scenario 2A, or for scenario 2B, $30,781,960. I've highlighted those blue because those numbers appear to be the closest numbers that they used for their estimated loan amount up above, also highlighted in blue. If you use a loan-to-cost scenario at 65%, which the current lending environment now has changed from the beginning of the year of 75% now to a 65% loan-to-cost, you could see that $31,824,000 drops to $27,005,000. Again, still not the lowest dollar amount of the loan. The third stress test that you have to pass is the debt service coverage ratio. and running the debt service coverage ratio of a 1.25, which is the market rate, and using both the 6.5% interest and the 7.5% interest, you would see that in green, the lowest loan amount that you could obtain for this project out in the market is $17,937,000 for scenario A, or $17,754,000 for scenario B. Those two dollar amounts in green should have been used up in paragraph 3, since they are the lowest dollar amount in the stress test. If you carry those numbers down into section 4, you'll see that the equity required, where it says equity needed in paragraph 4, goes in scenario A from $10,510,209. The equity needed goes up more than double to $24,103,838. As you carry that down, your return on investment in section 5 now drops from a 16.4% to a 1.6%, well below the 10% private-public partnership that was suggested by TSCA. Similarly, you do the same scenario in 2B, and you'll see that that comes down to a 1.7% rate of return. So, Commissioner Hartman, you had asked earlier, how could there actually be a significant drop from 16% down to 1% or a loss of 15%? These are the numbers that back that up.
Okay. Just more of a comment or a question. You know, I guess I'm just not clear. We can do these numbers. We all know that we can go back and forth on this, not us. I'm just not clear on, you keep stating you believe.
Yeah, I'm
Is
trying
this
to keep
factual,
myself.
or is this opinion?
This is our calculation.
Okay, based off your belief, though.
Based on our belief, and
Okay.
we may have erred. We
Okay.
don't. We were given a black and white printed copy of TSCA's report. We don't have their Excel spreadsheet formulas in there. So, thus, why on Monday and then again today, I suggest that should there be a sit-down meeting with the consultant and ourselves? It's very technical.
Okay.
And I'm sure that this information is maybe too technical for some people at this meeting, and they can't follow along. I get it. But that perhaps sit down and for TSCA to confirm, did they have an error? I'm not trying to
Okay.
beat TSCA up if they had an error, but let's get what the correct numbers are based on the pro forma that we have submitted. We're all professionals. Let's present to the commission what the correct numbers are and what they should be.
Okay, thank you, understood.
So that is scenario 2. Again, when we go to scenario 3, we have this similar errors, and I can go through those in great detail, but again, you'll see for scenario 3A and 3B, first we have the interest rate problem of 6.5%. Is it 7.5%? What is today's market? I won't go through that detail, but you'll see that the rate of return drops on scenario 3. Again, we have what we believe is the error of not multiplying by 12 months using the monthly payment versus the annual payment. And again, that drops the rate of return to a negative rate of return on 3A and 3B. And then again, running the stress tests on option 3A and 3B, we believe that they did not use the correct loan amount based on running the stress tests. So again, all very similar to 2A, but similar errors will in a spreadsheet will cause similar problems with it, regardless of the number of scenarios that you run.
So this property is really a money loser for you, whether you have the building there or not.
Absolutely correct. Thank you.
So why do you own it?
Why do we own it? We're in the development business. You purchase property, you come up with scenarios of try to invest what makes a worthwhile investment. What we see on paper, these scenarios that have been proposed by TSCA show us that these do not financially work without proper TIF contribution. We see that going on throughout the river communities,
Yep.
that you need additional funding for these types of projects.
Okay, and how many, and you probably can't answer this, so I won't ask that question. How many projects come through that don't use any TIF money at all?
How many projects?
How many projects I guess I should ask that probably to Kathleen Timoshenko, to ask that question. But is it, if there is TIF money available, you don't, I know that in this scenario, should we be counting it or not? I guess that's the question.
So, a couple things. One, why, perhaps you should ask, why is a TIF district created and why, in a specific area of Geneva? That, typically, a TIF district is created because it is known or figured out that the area cannot redevelop itself without some form of financial incentives or a financial incentive tool from the municipality. So the municipality does a study, they concur with that, and establish a TIF district. That TIF district then, as Teska has presented to you, has a couple ways to raise funds. One is the entire district, or then another way is more specifically the property in itself.
Correct.
And will that property generate enough increment that it can be funded back into the project that then makes that project financially feasible? We believe that the TIF dollars, looking at these scenarios, if you look at the slide I have up in front of you here, under paragraph 4, it says the estimated historic tax credit is 0, the estimated contribution from the city TIF is 0. So for this project, as outlined, it does not make a return. So what needs to happen? That line that 0 has to increase some dollar amount to make it financially feasible.
Yeah, and wouldn't it be the fact that it's in a TIF district mean that the idea would be using TIF money?
Yes. And anytime you're buying property in a TIF district, it suggests that your project is going to need a financial incentive to complete.
To be able to be viable at all.
Correct.
And if your numbers are correct and Teska's numbers are incorrect, then that kind of proves that point, and we're kind of back at, I don't know that we're back at the beginning, but
You're back where a financial incentive contribution is required for the project, and thus there's a hardship on the developer to restore the project or to restore the stone remnant structure without some financial incentive.
But you are in a TIF district and you would get money to do this project, so is that even, I mean, I guess, I guess I would ask, Lisa, do you understand?
So is the idea that while a TIF district exists, you have to still qualify to take advantage of any financial incentives that are available? Is that the idea here?
That's, yes.
Okay. And
yes,
so you need some sort of city approval in order to obtain those funds?
Correct. The city through their consultants and their staff would come up and say that we agree that a project needs X dollars, and we, the city council, are willing to contribute those X dollars to whatever the project may be. And they determine what those dollar amounts are. They look at a financial pro forma like this, and they literally stick numbers in and say, okay, we'll give you 5 million, we'll give you 10 million, and they will look at what the return happens to the return.
Right.
And that's where that private-public partnership comes along, where Teska in their first presentation said, normally in the market, they're looking for a 10% rate of return. So if we were coming before you for a scenario such as this, dollar amount would be inserted. If Teska was the consultant, they would say, city, you need to contribute X dollars in order to get a, quote, 10% rate of return in that private-public partnership.
So now, Michael, I don't know that this is part of what we're determining, whether or not they're eligible for TIF funds and all of this is not our topic of conversation, correct?
Good
I mean,
question.
This is for someone else. And we're talking about the demolition of a building and the removal of a
Where I was going
historic
initially.
district. So, I think, it sounds to me like Shodin is just maybe playing a little bit of a game here in
Not
order
a-
to make sure that everybody understands that you're looking for TIF funds. But I
disagree with that 100%. The ordinance requires for us to request the demolition of a landmark structure. We have to go out and get an estimate on the cost to restore it. We have to meet with the public staff. I have a degree in construction engineering. I've been in the business for over 35 years. I estimate, I budget, I build, I get quotes, I know what things cost. I'm told by city staff, I'm not qualified to do a construction estimate on that. I have to go out and hire an expert. So we spend the $50,000 to hire Altus Works, who is an expert in the costs of restoring a historic structure. These are not Shodin's numbers. These are Altus Works numbers. Now the question is, that's what the cost is. How are you going to pay for that cost of that structure? Teska, the consultant, agrees. Those are the identified costs. Now how do you pay for them? The ordinance says if we can show that there is a financial hardship, then we have a right to tear the structure down, assuming that it's landmarked properly and all of those other assumptions. That's what we're trying to prove to you, is that there is a financial hardship to the tune of $1.5 million last week. We're showing you $1.7 million, and if you wrote us a check for $1.7 million, we don't even know if we'd be agreeable to doing that for $1.7 million. So in no way, shape, or form is this a game.
Well,
This
and
is simply to try to document our case that there's a financial hardship to restore that remnant structure. Sorry.
It's unfortunate, and I know this is a little ahead of what we're talking about here, but, it's one of the most historic buildings in Geneva, and all I'm hearing about is money. And, Shodin Family Foundation knew what they purchased when they bought it. It was a historic building, and so.
I'm going to address that. My name is Kate McCracken, McCracken. I think it's really important that everybody understand one thing, because I think that's gotten lost in all of this. There have been a lot of comments about Shodin knew what it was getting into. That's absolutely not true. The ordinance that we're working under today did not exist when this property was purchased. It did not, the provision in 2016 did not exist where a third party, unrelated third party, could come in and request that the city of Geneva landmark a piece of property such that it could no longer be developed. This property has stood like this for 60 months because of it being landmarked. So no, when this property was acquired, it was not landmarked, nor did the ordinance exist that literally allowed a third party to determine the future of this property. They bought it because they knew it had potential. No one expected that somebody was going to come in and put everything to a halt and hold it hostage.
And I will further add that when we bought the property, it was totally enclosed.
You didn't know it was there? I've lived in Geneva for 20 years. I knew it was there.
What was there?
The
What did-
historic building that was
How much of the
encased
building
by.
was, how much of the building was there? Nobody knew. We have photographs of
Then why didn't you just take the
preservation
whole thing
planner.
down when you could?
That- I'm sorry?
You knew it was historic, I'm
sorry?
I mean, somebody demolished that building and left it there standing because they knew it was
We
historic.
were in a partnership. We agreed with the city and the city staff. We're going to take it like an onion, and we're going to peel back the cloves of the onion. We're going to keep peeling it back to see what we uncover, how much of the structure is there. Clearly, that was it agreed to. That's what our demolition permit says. That's
Like I said, I'm getting a little cart before the horse. I just feel like I'm hearing about numbers, and I get where you're headed with this, but at the same time, I just feel like, I don't know, I feel like you guys just don't care, and it's unfortunate. But
I
keep going,
disagree
keep
with
going.
you.
But
We
I
do-
guess one of the questions I have about whether that you were shocked that a third party could come in and put a nomination in and it wasn't the case. I thought that had always,
No, that had not been the case. That literally was in 2016, and it was a hot debate.
there was a method to have, was there a method before 2016 for a third party to do that, Michael?
I would really want to look into what the language said, but my belief is that there was a possibility of people nominating other property, and it was, as Ms. McCracken has said, it was a lengthy debate, and I don't want to sit here tonight and try to recall that entire debate.
I will say, and I just, that provision that allowed a third party, there are other municipalities that have instituted that and now retracted it.
You need to speak into the microphone.
That provision that was instituted and amended in 2016 did not exist in the Historic Preservation Ordinance as it was originally drafted. That was an addition, and as Mr. Lambert said, it was highly debated, and it will continue to be debated because it has substantially impacted what's happening here today.
Okay, so I'm going to make a comment now. First of all, the property that we're talking about has been landmarked. Second of all, irrespective of the timing, whether it's hotly debated or not, it's the law of Geneva.
I agree.
And it exists, and this property has been designated. The propriety of this hearing seems to have gone a little bit sideways, and I think everyone's probably guilty in pushing it sideways. As a reminder, we're reviewing the propriety of a demolition permit under our code, which talks about hardship, as Mr. Patzelt has said, but also talks about alternatives, because a demolition permit is to be granted in this instance only after exhausting all alternatives. So I think why we're hearing these numbers is because are there alternatives, yes or no? That's part of the hardship debate as well.
But these alternatives are speculative and models. So they're not actual numbers. We're fighting over specific amounts, and I'm questioning the relevancy of the need to be that accurate. I get that there are models that possibly are viable, but to spend several hours on going through an analysis, I've gone through pro formas my whole professional career that may get you a loan, but not necessarily are they the final numbers. And so at this level, I'm questioning the need for this level of detail.
Well, and my point was that the column that includes the historic building and the one that doesn't show any difference in return on investment, so I don't know what the point of this is, you know?
Correct.
So just to answer that question, the ordinance itself requires as part of our application that we submit a pro forma, okay? So that, we were required to submit a pro forma, and we did that. As part of this, usually my voice is so loud that it's not a problem. As part of this discussion, because we were required to provide the pro forma, there was a request on everybody's part that be analyzed by a third party.
Of course.
And so Tesca came in and did the analysis that was requested. So we get the analysis, everybody has an opportunity to review the analysis. We have an obligation to put on record what is, we believe, defective in that analysis. Again, we have to go back to the fact of the matter is we have standards for demolition, okay? And we have to show at least one of those standards. That's why we're here today. And one of those standards is the retention of the building will cause undue economic hardship to the owner of record.
Sure, and what I'm saying is that these numbers, whether it's the higher ROI or not, it's comparing the building being there versus not being there, and there's no difference really between the two, so it's not really showing that.
It's not showing a hardship.
It's not
Well,
showing
it's
a
not
hardship.
showing a difference between, there's no difference in hardship between having the building there and not being there.
Yeah, And you're saying it doesn't have an ROI when you have the building? It doesn't have an ROI when you don't have the building?
Right.
And that's using your numbers versus using, and so basically, and then when you look at the the thing that I get hung up on is if it weren't in a TIF district and one had to be created to do this, then I would say you can't use the TIF money as part of the incentive to do it. That's what it's there for. So you're saying we can't put that in, can they put that in the pro forma? I guess I would have to ask an expert on whether the TIF money can be put in the pro forma or not. Because it's in a district, you're gonna use the TIF money because it's there.
But then
And-
we're right back to where Mr. Stasen made the right comment. We're talking, at the end of the day, what the ordinance says.
Well, the ordinance says that we have to follow, we have to exhaust all, don't we have to exhaust the options available?
I understand, but the only options available that we've been discussing are the options of the redevelopment of the entirety of the site. That's what we're talking about. So the commission shall consider only the property, building structure, architectural feature, or object proposed for demolition. And that, and
Excuse me, I mean, can you respond to that, Mr. Lambert?
and Mr. Lambert did respond and used the word merit and said.
I've not
Hold on,
responded to your
All right,
don't
I
put
will.
words in his
Fair,
mouth.
fair, fair.
That's not exactly fair.
So the ordinance says, you're right, the property or site is included, and this is a singular site with a singular address of 4 East State Street. And so, yes, we have looked at it as a singular site, and it's a small building on a large land site, so that does provide for opportunities to be looked at for redevelopment. We're not looking at a specific project, we're not looking at the merits of the architecture or the brick that's being selected, or whether it's got a flat roof or a pitched roof or whatever. Those are the merits that are being referenced. We're looking at a site, and this is a small building on a very large development site.
But that's not, this is a singular site. This has been landmarked. The bigger part of the area has
I'm
been.
sorry, I will interrupt you now if I may, because that's incorrect. It's a portion of a site has been landmarked. It was never designated as a separate parcel. It was never subdivided. It was never created as a separate zoning lot. It is an entire singular parcel that this small building sits upon. A portion of the site was landmarked, but it sits on a site that is larger than the landmarked site.
Right. And why are we discussing then the entirety of the site and not
Because
just the landmark
it
building?
is a single site with a single address with a single parcel identification number. It depends on how you want to read the ordinance, I guess.
Well, I
Because
guess-
it says site or property.
Mr. Sendek,
Yeah,
can you?
so we're getting into a legal debate, Kate.
I understand.
So it's the city's interpretation that because the situs of the building, the landmark property, is contained in one legal lot, one legal parcel, with one address, one property index number for tax purposes, and one legal description per the law. We think we're on a better legal position with respect to that analysis. You do not need to agree on that, but that's our position.
And that, I mean, then that begs the question. Why are we doing then an analysis of the entirety of the corner?
It's on its own parcel. It's its own building.
You mean adding the additional lot that you have,
We don't have.
you have a contract on?
Correct.
You have a contract on.
Okay, so in respect to options and whether, let's be clear, Shodine has an option on that property. Any type of development should necessarily include that, at least conceptually. So I think for purposes of what different opportunities exist, I think because one of the analysis of the ordinance is, has the applicant exhausted all reasonable possibilities prior to demolition? This is, to use the commissioner's perspective, some of this is modeling, to be sure. And you can scrape away models you don't like or believe or you think is unreasonable, but we're still working within a realm of what options are there out there. It's for these commissioners to make determinations on whether they think some are reasonable, unreasonable, should be considered, shouldn't be considered. They're the umpires on that one.
So we've heard Commissioner McManus say that all of these options that we've seen tonight are not financially feasible. So is somebody going to prepare more options?
What I said
Oh, no,
is
no, no.
that.
First of all, hold on. Her comments for the record are hers, and she gets to make whatever finding she wants to make. I think she gave an insightful explanation of where her head is, but let's let her make her determination at the right time.
Then I would also ask, to make these financially feasible, does this body make a recommendation to the city council as to the dollar amount that should be contributed?
No, we don't, this is whether the building should be demolished because it is a historic structure and it's registered in the state of Geneva, in the city of Geneva. And that's where we stop. And then,
The ordinance requires you to review it for a financially,
well, we're reviewing the financial options that you have. And if we find that there is a viable financial option that,
you'll let us know.
well,
Okay, hold on. All right, so hold on.
that's,
So we're getting into an argument now. It's your time, Mr. Petzold. Your presentation is on the board. I recommend you do whatever you see fit, but I don't think it's productive for anyone to continue to argue.
correct.
Excuse me, Mr. Petzold, to get back on track. I do have a question. So obviously you've been in the development business for a long time and have a lot of experience. Excuse me. Is there a square foot cost that you've generated to restore that structure to full operation for whatever use it may be, whether it was public or private? Do you have a square foot cost on that?
Altus Works, who prepared the construction estimate, has come up with roughly the number of $1,000 a square foot.
Would you believe in that number?
I have to. It's by a licensed professional
With your experience and knowledge, $1,000 a square foot for a rehab?
sounds extremely high.
Okay. Sorry about my voice here. Okay, I would agree with that. I mean, I don't know if if Shodin Foundation has explored all the options for this
We have.
exact building, not the surrounding property. We have.
We believe that we have. We have
You
no,
give an example of a management building, correct, or some type of, at $20 a square foot?
again, working with the ordinance, we are directed to review the building to see how it compares with market conditions. So
Okay.
when you refer to the $20 a square foot, we have gone to the market to see what is retail and office space being rented for in the general area, or I'll say up and down the East State Street corridor. And that is the $20 a square foot, which is the, quote, a market rate. If you think it's 19 or if you think it's 21, let's put it into the
Okay.
spreadsheet and see what it comes out at. I believe, and I think I've been on record as saying, I don't know of any building in Kane County that's worth $1,000 a square foot.
I just find that number, $1,000 a square foot, completely out of line.
It's it's not the Shodin number. It's a professional.
Okay.
That 1,000, I'm looking at the numbers right now. 10% design contingency, 15% construction, 10% architectural fee. There's a 40% markup, so it's not actual numbers on the building. It's with all the contingencies and design fees included. Now, that's part of your cost, but when we're talking about construction cost, that's apples and oranges. So that's what's skewing the numbers at 1,000 a square foot.
Thank you.
That concludes my presentation.
Okay. Does Tesca, I can allow Tesca to respond to do you want to respond to his assertions of your report? Because I'd like to know what you think of his assertions.
Right. We just received the testimony about 5 minutes before the meeting, so we would prefer to make a written response within 5 business days if that works for the commission.
I
would ask your, poll your colleagues.
So would this mean another public hearing after that? Because we have another regularly scheduled meeting.
on the 16th, but
Yeah.
we would have to, I'm not available for that one, but I guess I would, it is a huge difference in numbers, I feel, and I don't know whether, where we're at. I mean, that's like miles apart from each other,
Sure.
not feet apart. And I would like to also know a little more about, but I guess that we will be able to ask questions of other, I guess it seems like I want to know from them if they feel that that is a valid criticism of their report. I mean, do you feel it hinges on their report that this, whether we approve the demolition or not? I guess that's where it somewhat comes down to. What do you think, Don? Do you want to see their response to that, to Chaudine's Families Foundation's assertions on their report? I mean, we can go round and round on this.
Yes, definitely. I'm agreeing with your comment about we can go round and round.
Yeah.
Would it help the commission to have TESCA go back and review the report and come back and make a presentation, or just provide a written commentary?
I think a written
response?
commentary would be fine.
So is that what the commission,
I would want to see a written commentary on it to see, where they're, these things are miles apart. Do you agree, George, or do you not think that it's worth even?
I'm looking down the road, and I guess I can see that a commentary or additional calculations will probably be coming. But then, what I'm wondering is, will Chaudine then want to counter those numbers? And how long are we going to go back and forth on numbers, which I still don't think are that relevant? Yeah, that's, again, my position on this. And this could go on for quite a long time. So if there is commentary, and I would think I would cap the,
Well, I think that I would want to have them respond to these comments, and then we don't have to, can that be released to the public without having it in the public, in the,
If it's the contemplation of the HPC to take a report, that's part of the record, it's part of the public hearing. So what I would suggest, if that's the will of this tribunal, is that 5 days or whatever the consultants require, take the report in, it would be submitted and circulated at the next public hearing. If you wanted to give the petitioner, who gets the last word irrespective of whether this occurs or not, let's be
Correct.
clear, they get the last word before the public hearing is concluded, before this tribunal deliberates. So no one will be cheated of an opportunity to reply. I guess the question that Michael offered that I think needs to be reiterated is, if this report will help this commission in its endeavors, I think you ought to take that opportunity. If it won't help in the endeavors, then you don't need it.
And if we said we didn't need it, then we would be taking a vote tonight?
well, we wouldn't be taking, we would be, what we would do is we'd want to at least close the hearing.
Yeah.
And then we could deliberate,
Okay,
and then we could vote.
okay.
So the, it,
So we would be voting no matter what in another session of this public hearing. So we would close the public hearing and then have a follow-up session where we're voting? I don't know the
yeah,
process, sorry.
well, we deliberate,
So you, if you close the public hearing, there is no more testimony, there's no more getting any more facts that you may or may not think you need. But you then have 45 days in which to make a determination.
Okay. And in
Just-
what forum are we making that determination? Are we holding another meeting, another?
You'd be
or
holding
would-
another meeting.
it'd have
and
to be a
just-
public
ju-
meeting, yeah.
Okay.
And just to be clear, because this date was set at May 2nd, 45 days is before the regular June meeting, so it would require a special meeting sometime between tonight, if you closed it tonight,
Yeah.
and June 16th.
Okay,
Our regular meeting of the HPC is scheduled for June 20th.
okay.
So just to keep that in mind. No,
No, we're in April.
We're in May 2nd.
Right.
30 days from today would be June 2nd, 45, oh yeah, you're right, sorry.
Okay. So I guess it's up to us as a commission to decide whether it's germane to the argument, whether this issue with this report is enough that we need to know. We need to know.
Yes.
Whether,
Yeah.
and Jewel, do you have an opinion about that?
I am just reading through this, and I am thinking at the moment, from reading through my notes and listening to the presentation, that we, in order to make a decision on this, I'm thinking we do need to be able to have that written report within 5 days and revisit this again and have at the next available public hearing.
What's your thoughts, Lisa?
Oh, I'm kind of leaning toward the same thing. I think we do need to probably hear what they have to say in response. And then I think we would be able to maybe close the hearing after that.
Well, definitely, I would say that. I mean, Don, do you agree that we would want to see this, at least?
I would agree with that. I don't mean to go take a step back here. I'm just, after Commissioner Stasen's comment and Mr. Patzell about, for focusing on the building, that structure. I am not a land developer, but I have been in the industry for over 40 years, and I just find that number at $1,000 a square foot very hard to grasp for a rehab. I mean, I haven't seen, Mr. Petzl said they had photographs of some of the shoring and some of the work that was done to stabilize the building as far as safety and structurally. And, I've never seen those photos of some of the footings and foundations. I know it was spoken in depth about the fire damage and things of that nature. So if we're sticking to the building itself and rehab and getting that building back up to standards or codes, I mean, I really don't feel comfortable with not knowing a little bit more about the structure itself. And I don't know where to go with that. I don't know where to go with that. I mean, if it's 1,000.
I think that's getting to the point of, is it a landmark, and we've already decided that.
Okay,
So there's certain things that we come in with the idea that this has been done.
okay.
And do you agree with me? I mean, is that's the way we should be looking?
I mean, I'm not a professional estimator. I'm not claiming to be a structural engineer,
Correct.
but with my,
Commissioner Hartman, I've extended the invitation to city, various city departments. I'll extend the invitation to you. I have taken others that have expressed an interest on purchasing the building for $1, and offered no,
You know,
no
back to the
problem.
dollar thing. Has any building ever been sold for a dollar?
If you would like to tour the building, I'd be more than happy to meet you down there.
Okay,
And you could tour the building. Being inside the building and seeing what the condition is, I think, is worth, seeing is believing.
But again, whether it's, that's somewhat,
am I getting off track?
I think
Okay,
you are.
okay.
I think you are. But
That's fine.
We're here to look at whether we should demolish the building or not, and if it's,
But wouldn't the structural integrity of that building fall into that?
it would, I mean,
I'm not trying to push this out any further for anyone.
no.
Can I speak at some point? I mean, it's an hour, 2
Well,
hours.
we are still, we have just got,
Trying to decide, of course, the specifics, right?
okay. Yes, George?
Well, I was going to mention to Don, too, there's that Millrace Inn Building Assessment Report of August 2nd, 17th, 2022, that does have numbers, diagrams, photos, et cetera.
Okay.
Are you in possession of that, or?
I will be.
So, it's 56 pages.
Okay.
I'm looking at it right now.
Okay.
And that may be of some help.
I mean, I could be completely wrong. Maybe it's $2,000 a square foot. Okay, thank you.
But I guess and since this discussion is going a variety of ways, as an architect, I see 100 different options that have not even been noted in any of these meetings in terms of exploration. In fact, I personally probably worked on 50 or 100 projects where integration of historic structures have been modeled to be part of the greater whole. And what I've never seen is any numbers. It seems like it's either standalone in its viability as a separate business or integration into the models that were generated from the apartment complex. Aren't there, and I know, Michael, you've said before, it is our, I don't know if it's duty or responsibility to make sure that we've looked at all possibilities before we agree to demolition. Am I correct in that or not? Please correct me if I'm wrong.
That is one of the provisions in a summary. If you would like the exact language, I can read that to you.
Okay.
Give me 1 second.
But I guess, where do you stop on this, too? There is a,
Well, I mean, I think that without, if the report would have come, if Shodin would have said that we don't like, not like, we have a fundamental difference in opinion about whether this report is, but didn't bring up the areas that are clearly, that they've said are incorrect, and do really go to the bottom line of what the scenarios are. I guess that would be one way to look at it. It's like, well, you can have two different opinions, but when you're dealing with numbers and facts, you can't have two different sets of facts, basically.
numbers seem to be easier to vet and verify, though, than legal opinions, so.
That's correct. I mean, there's no two ways about that, yes.
Commissioner Stasen, the exact language that you were asking about is demolition shall be considered only when all other redevelopment options for a building, structure, object, improvement, or site have been exhausted.
So in my mind, that's what I'm questioning at this point in time. That's pretty open-ended, but I envision a variety of other untapped possibilities.
Is there a consensus then that we would hold the public hearing open until we have the response to the report, and then that will be it? I mean, we are not going to keep it open any longer than that. And then we will let the public have their final say, have the Shodin Family Foundation have their final say, and then we will deliberate and vote.
Yeah.
Yes.
It have to be some other time, but not tonight. Making a decision.
Correct.
I have something to add to this that came out of just the discussion tonight that hadn't been presented before.
I think
You're
we're
not
gonna-
at the microphone, and if you have something that's laser, no?
I have something that's relevant. I'll try to make it.
If you do that for one, it's for all then.
Yeah, and I think what we want to do is we want to have the response from the TESCA report. We can have any public that want to add any testimony at that point, and then we'll have Shodin Family Foundation do their final summation, if you will, and then we will close the public hearing, and we will deliberate and vote.
Okay.
That's our go forward,
Okay.
because
And we can do this in our next meeting?
we cannot do it in our next meeting because I will not be here
Okay,
on the 16th.
okay.
But I am here on the 23rd.
Is that, my only limitation would be Tuesday, Thursdays. I can't do any extra Tuesday, Thursdays.
But, I didn't think it would close, I thought we can keep it open until June 20th. Okay. We just have to go to a date certain. We don't have a 45-day situation here.
Right.
So it's just at a date certain, so we can do June 20th for the meeting itself.
Okay.
The regular meeting on June 20th, and hopefully we have a full quorum at that point,
Good.
a full complement of our commissioners at that point, too. It would be good to have more people here to make that final decision.
Yes.
With that, I guess I have to ask if we can motion to continue the public hearing to a date certain.
I'll move to, what am I doing again?
Your continued public hearing.
I'd like to move to continue the public hearing to a date certain,
June 20th.
June 20th, 2023.
I would second that.
Okay, all,
Mr. Chairman, question?
yes.
Uh,
We
can
have
Can we have specific dates as to when the applicant will receive the revised TESCA report? And when do we have to respond by, if at all?
We're taking the document, when the consultant gives it, it will be distributed at June 20. You'll get your last word on that, David, but we're
So
not going
we-
to do a letter back.
So we will not be able to see the report until June 20th?
Correct. When the commission gets it, you'll get it. There was a motion on the floor.
Correct, seconded. So if you could call the roll.
Hartman,
Aye.
Jensen,
Aye.
McManus,
Aye.
Stazen,
Aye.
Zelmer.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. I get a motion to adjourn.
I'm our mover today. I'll move to adjourn the meeting.
I will second that motion.
All in favor? Aye. Motion carries.
Aye.
We're out.